What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Hawks Film Room podcast. It's Friday night. This podcast will be out Saturday morning. Quick episode today. Not too much going on in Hawks world. Obviously, did want to touch on the Davis Bertans news. I think it was Wednesday. The Hawks were reportedly linked to Davis Bertans, expected to pursue. Was the exact verbiage in free agency? Was reported by Chase Hughes of NBC Sports Washington. Very vague at this point. Does not mean, necessarily that the Hawks will be pursuing him or will sign him. Obviously, the Hawks have a ton of cap space, so they're going to be linked to a lot of free agents, especially someone like Bertans, who is on the upper echelon kind of the free agents. Could make, $18, $20 million a year. Great shooter, would be a great offensive fit. Equally concerning maybe on defense as a kind of a lanky power forward, offensive minded, a 3-point shooter. Really, great offensive player all around, but not sure how great he fits with John Collins. But nonetheless, I think it's something you definitely kick the tires on. He's one of the premier offensive players on the market. Hawks need shooters, plays for a division, opponent right now, or, he's coming off a season with a division opponent who will likely want to re-sign him to retain his services. So worst case, drop up the price on them maybe. I like, the idea of being interested in a lot of guys, especially when you have all that cap space, but ultimately I wouldn't want to go, too crazy on Bertans for, $20 million for 4 years, something like that. Probably wouldn't be crazy about that. But, a 2 or 3 year deal, something a little more affordable, probably won't get him, but that's probably the kind of deal I would be trying to get from him. But, probably wouldn't get him that offer. So there you go. I like him. Wouldn't go crazy. Kind of how I feel about all the free agents this year. There's none of them that I'm like, think really the Hawks should go all out for. I have went kind of through a few of the free agents on one of the previous episodes, the kind of guys I think they should pick up and go back and check that out. But just wanted to touch on it. It's something that's been reported, something you guys probably, saw on Twitter or social media. So yeah. Other thing we're going to get to today is a few questions from the mailbag. First question. Does a trade for Victor Oladipo with the 6th pick and other assets, Herter, Collins, etc., make sense? I think a trade for Oladipo could make sense for the Hawks if he's willing to sign an extension. If he is not certain on signing an extension, I would absolutely not trade the number 6 pick for him, much less, someone else like Herter or Collins. I think Collins and the number 6 pick is steep. That's too much for Oladipo. I know he's a great player, and he would be a good fit next to Trey, but number six pick and Collins is a little just too much for me given the health concerns with Oladipo. But just the number 6 pick and another, one of the other young guys like Herter or Hunter, I'm still not crazy about it. I think Hunter and Herter and Reddish especially all have their own respective ceiling that is reasonable and something, they could reach. So I'm just not crazy about involving 6 and another young asset, but at the same time, if they did pull the trigger on a Herter and number 6 for Oladipo type move with Oladipo signing an extension, I would definitely understand it. Might not be my favorite move, but I would understand it. Another question, well, it's not really just one person asked me a question, but I've had a few people kind of bring up Killian Hayes and say whether they think, the Hawks should take Killian Hayes or, the Hawks can't take Killian Hayes because he's kind of a point guard. So I just want to talk about Killian Hayes for a moment. Brad Rowland, came on the show and talked about this for our mock draft episode. And this is something he says, all the time about Killian to me, both offline and online, or offline, and on a podcast. But Killian is good enough to where if certain people are gone at 6, you at least have to make someone trade up and get Killian. And if they don't, I think you might just be fine taking him and bringing him into the fold as like a backup point guard at first, and maybe eventually he grows into the kind of guy who can start next to Trey or finish games next to Trey, what have you. So I don't think you worry about it if you think he's the best player. I think you just take him. I think he's more versatile enough to play off the ball with Trey, and I also think I've said this about other prospects like Okoro, getting the ball out of Trey's hands is not bad. He's gonna get the ball plenty. He almost his usage rate is a little probably too high. You want him to be engaged on both ends. You want him to have enough energy to play defense while he's in the game and not just constantly have to do everything on offense. So, everything is in terms of handling the ball, initiating, going off screens. I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if you get Trey a few, kick out jumpers a game where all he has to do is step into the shot and knock it down. So I think you can take Killian Hayes. Next question. Is Deni Avdija worth trading up for? I particularly don't recommend trading up in this draft. Depends how far. If it's like 4 and you were just in love with Deni, I guess maybe you try to get from 6 to 4 because I definitely think Cleveland likes him. That's kind of what the buzz in the air is. So, I mean, I wouldn't trade up, but if you trade up to 4, I don't know what you do because I don't think the Hawks want to give up a future pick, so I'm not really sure how they would get from 6 to 3 or 4. But I would firmly not recommend trading a 2021 or 2022 first round pick. Whether it's the OKC pick, the Hawks pick, whatever it is, I would keep it. So I don't think it's worth it to trade up for Deni. I would just hope he's there at 6 if I liked him. And if he's not, I would take someone else, which leads into our other question. Devin Vassell or Isaac Okoro, who would be your preferred pick for the Hawks? Okay. Some of you have probably heard me say this before, whether it was on this podcast or on the Locked On Hawks podcast with Brad, but I prefer Isaac Okoro. I think he's a more versatile prospect. I think he's a more dominant defensive prospect. While I do acknowledge Vassell is probably going to be a better offensive player, at least in terms of shooting as a rookie, and in that sense he fits better with the Hawks, but in another sense Okoro kind of makes your team a little more versatile. He can handle the ball. He can get downhill. I think he'll be able to draw fouls. I think he'll be able to make good kick-out passes. I think, if he has shooting gravity, which is a question mark, but if you buy that he'll be able to have shooting gravity eventually, at least some, I think he'll be better than Devin Vassell. But if he cannot shoot, I think Vassell is a high-level enough shooter and playmaker and has a good enough feel for the game, both in team offense and team defense, that, if you completely don't buy the shot on Okoro, then I think you have to have Vassell ahead. And this is something, I've talked about with Spencer Perlman, Brad Rowland on this podcast. So sorry if I sound like a broken record or if I'm repeating myself, but someone asked the question, so I just wanted to circle back on it. Yeah, I like Okoro. Next question, what is more likely, a trade up or a trade back? Well, kind of going back into is Deni Avdija worth trading up for? I think a trade back is much more likely. Also talking about Hayes again. If the Knicks or if Detroit at 7 or 8, if they're really liking Hayes, they can put together an offer. Like I think the Knicks can offer 8 and 27 for the 6th pick, which is a great offer for the Hawks, and they should probably jump on it, given the concerns about if Killian is too much of a primary guard to fit with Trey. So I would say a trade back is definitely more likely. I really just don't see how a trade up happens. Like I said, I don't think they're going to trade future picks, so future first round picks. So yeah, trade back would be more likely to me. Okay, getting into the last question. Kind of a longer question, more kind of multi-part question. Question is, the way I see it, the Hawks need to target a power forward, a 3-and-D wing, and a point guard, whether it be in the draft or in free agency. Say Schlink can cover the other two in free agency, then who is your target at number 6 in each of those roles? So a draft target at number 6 for a power forward, for a 3-and-D guy, and for a point guard. Well, power forward, you're pretty much at number 6. There's only really 3 guys I guess you could talk yourself into, and that's Denny Avdia, who is more of a small forward, Obi Toppin, who you're probably only drafting for the Hawks if you have a trade for Collins, and then Patrick Williams, I think you can kind of introduce at 6, but that's still a little early. I think 10, 9 is more Patrick Williams territory, but if you love him, you could take him at 6. So I would list those 3 there: Williams, Toppin, and Denis. 3-and-D, Vassell is the best 3-and-D, pure 3-and-D guy. Okoro, you could throw in that category, but he's obviously not purely a 3-and-D. Even if he becomes a shooter, he's more than just a 3-point shooter offensively. But he's currently also not a 3-point shooter offensively, so he doesn't really fit in that. So yeah, Vassell would be the 3-and-D. Point guard, that's tough. I do not think the Hawks can draft a point guard at number 6. If you're talking about just in terms of like a ball handler, obviously Killian Hayes, LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards, who will not be there at 6. LaMelo Ball, very unlikely to be there at 6. Killian Hayes, ESPN type, intel, which is usually, sourced, had Hayes going at 14 in the mock after the draft or after the lottery. So Killian Hayes is probably the closest thing to a point guard the Hawks can actually draft, getting kind of circling back into when I talked about Hayes. But yeah, I think free agency will be where the Hawks sign, a backup power forward and a backup point guard. I do not really see them using the 6th pick to go at those things. So really 3-and-D, someone like Vassell. If that's what you're looking for, if you're looking for the Hawks to pick up a 3-and-D option at number 6, then Vassell would be the best option. Before we get out of here, I just wanted to take a moment to say, I am 100% with the players and their decision to kind of pause the play a little bit, boycott, whatever they're calling it, to take a moment to just put the attention back on what's going on in our country. And shouts out to them for putting it in their own hands, Milwaukee Bucks for standing up, for the right thing and, against the social injustices that continue to happen in our country. So appreciate everyone for listening again. If you give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, that helps us out tremendously. If you enjoyed the show, or if you're watching on YouTube, click that subscribe button, click that upvote button, drop a comment, tell us what you liked or you didn't like about the show, what we could do better next time. So appreciate everyone, being a part of this. Really, means a lot that you guys come back and listen every time. So see you next time, and again, appreciate everything.